Cool. So now, so like you said, it's a very simple code, but soon we will find out how a single line here can give an attacker, um, basically they can take over the account, right?
Exactly. And so that library, when you install it, actually tells you this library here, node serialize at the top, is actually showing a vulnerability. It's a pretty serious one. It means that the unserialized is actually parsing functions. And when it parses functions, it reads them as functions and can be even executed in the event of unserialized. So what ends up happening if you use it properly as intended, you can actually run functions by just using the serialized unserialized of the SQL, or of the JSON.
So let's see this in action. Do you want to show this? And then
Yeah,
we'll...
I can show that in action. Okay, so I'm going to write a function. If I read the manual of this library, which the vulnerability is stated there, okay, in the message, which returns to me, I want to get something from it. I'm going to actually run a function. In this case, this function is going to require fs. Then it's going to read file. I'm going to find where the file that I want to read is in. I can read a system file or some secret file in this case, and then return the text. And very important, I can actually run the method. If I just insert it, I have a method, but it's not executed. If I use the parentheses here at the end, it actually runs it. Okay, and this one is not important, but when I run it this way, I'm going to get the flag because this is actually going to read the secret key. So this method, this function, actually executes on the server. It's a remote code execution. So it means that when this Node.js command, data equals serialize unserialized request body, is actually executed, what ends up happening is this is being executed. Okay, this code is being executed.
And this is just an example. This is just an example of a function. For this challenge, we said let's read from secret.js, but it could be basically any function. So you're basically getting here command line almost level to the server just because of a single line that looks harmless at the beginning.
Exactly. It's exactly what's happening here. When you run this code, okay, what ends up happening, the deserialized, the unserialized function runs eval. And let's see that. Actually, in the library itself, there's an eval command, which you can see here. There's an eval command if you go to the source code of this library, node serialize, and it actually runs the function, okay? And when it runs the function, this is executed. And specifically in this one, the result of the function is returned in the message. Okay?
So you're getting like input and output. You can basically, you can run a command, take an SSH key or anything that you can find there, passwords, basically anything. You have command line. You can potentially build a whole command and control using this.
Exactly. It's a remote code execution. It's a very serious vulnerability, which means that someone can take over the entire server and do whatever they want on the server. So the problem is huge.
Is this a vulnerability? Because this is intended to work like this, right? This library is risky. It's not like something that needs to be patched. This is, even if you take the latest library, it's still...
So you're right. So this was identified as a vulnerability if you use it incorrectly. In this case, it was used incorrectly because it was used on user input without any sanitization or any control. What ends up happening is that anyone can actually run code on the server. But this is intended behavior because this function was intended to be parsed by this library. So if you use it internally between your data and within the system without having any user input in this, then this is fine. It's fine. It works as expected. So the vulnerability is not because the library is flawed. It's because that's what the library does. And you need to understand how to use it. Definitely not when user input is involved, and actually kind of like expose it to what we're just showing here, which is actual remote code execution of any kind. So the first takeaway is, again, you install a library, take a look at the third-party library vulnerability. Obviously, when you run npm or any package manager, you can get those notifications about vulnerabilities and see if there are versions that fix it. And sometimes it's intended behavior is here. You need to always question whether you can return a message that can be controlled from the input. Because a message that is controlled from the user input means that any harmful behavior can return messages, get some data back to a potential attacker, and you need to be on top of it. It's always important to think about the idea that we talked about before, allow list versus deny list, where you allow certain things, okay? And if you need to open up more in the future, you can always open up more, but never start with, I allow everything, meaning I can put any message I want. In this case, I want to allow, I don't know, select from 20 types of messages or 20 type of things, but not everything in the world, okay? And then lastly, as I mentioned before, if we limit the permissions of the service that is running in, you might ask, I'm a developer, so that's a DevOps problem. Why do you care? Because the DevOps don't know what's required from the software to be able to do. And if the developers give directions about, oh, this service needs A, B, C access, that's it, all the rest is out of range and out of scope, then DevOps can limit the user and create a user that actually can do only A, B, C, not more. So DevOps, it's their problem or it's their challenge to make sure that users have the bare minimum permissions and credentials. However, developers know what those are. So we need to be involved and we need to give instructions on what we need to do. In this case, I'm running it on Vercel. That's a serverless function. There's absolutely no power to the running user, but for running the code, even not deleting files, because otherwise players in this game could have deleted my files.
Yeah. So I think I love what you said. This last part that you spoke about. I think it shows that this is a security culture goes across the entire company, and we tend to think about who's responsible for security. Well, like you just said, everyone, right? Yes, the security is probably the ones that are handling this, but like you said, if they don't know how the app works or what's needed. So we need, and this is why we're doing this as well, right? Because we want the developers not only to know how to code secure code, we also want them to understand that they need to collaborate with, the DevOps or the DevSecOps or the security, and communication is key. And it all starts with culture.